I'm Timothy Go, and I'm here to tell you about
student here at New Westminster Secondary School. There is no legislation that deals specifically with drugs and driving.
There's finally a break in the rash of home invasions in the Lower Mainland.
And the lack of a salmon treaty here, things are not expected to get any better soon. Are released into rivers like these to replenish depleting salmon stocks in the province.
Forecast tonight and tomorrow. I'm Timothy Go.
Drinking and driving is dangerous, but driving under the influence of drugs is even worse, especially if you happen to be around one such driver. Sasan Solari knows that firsthand. His common-law wife, Tara Nash, was struck and killed by a drug-impaired driver last December while she was cycling along this street. It's difficult for Solari to understand the circumstances behind Nash's tragic death. Why Gordon Julius, the driver of the car, was allowed to drive even after numerous impaired driving convictions.
Well, I think, the whistle should have been blown on him a long time ago. He's had a history of substance abuse, a history of driving while under the influence. He's been caught twice in the last 6, this is the third offense in the last 6 years. Someone should have realized that this person shouldn't be driving, and something should have been done maybe on his, first or second offense.
The problem is there is no legislation that deals specifically with drugs and driving, and police want that changed. They want to see new laws that would make it easier for them to arrest drug-impaired drivers on the road. Corporal Douglas Ferguson is one of the very few drug recognition experts in the city, and he says drugs and driving is a serious safety issue, and lawmakers should give police more power to deal with them.
What I think the law needs to do, or at least the lawmakers have to do, is address the issue of drug impairment as with regard to permitting the police to collect the proper evidence.
Right now, police have to go through a lengthy testing process before they can charge a person driving while high on drugs. Corporal Ferguson says no one would like to be around a drug-impaired driver. Drugs could have many effects that will lower the driver's ability to operate a vehicle. Some could slow down or speed up the driver, even impair the driver's vision. Unlike drinking drivers, drug drivers are much more difficult to convict because their impairment is not easily recognized by the law. And that's why police want a specific legislation to deal with drug drivers. Timothy Go, Vancouver. If BC Transit has its way, Granville Street, just south of the bridge, will see major changes by next year. The Crown Corporation plans to provide rapid bus service for Richmond commuters. But longtime residents like Betty Sawyer says a high-speed bus system will only ruin this vibrant neighborhood.
We don't see any benefit to the local community for this new bus service, and to do something that's kind of essentially destroy a community to save 10 minutes on a commute from Richmond into Vancouver hardly seems justifiable.
BC Transit chose Granville Street because it's the main north-south transit corridor between Richmond and Vancouver. If this plan goes through, this neighborhood would see longer buses that would be able to control traffic lights to allow them to pass without stopping. It would also take out a significant number of parking spots that would allow buses access to the curb lanes. And that's why one of the biggest concerns is safety for pedestrians, especially the elderly.
And I'm very much afraid that if the traffic and the parking rather is removed from a lot of these along several blocks of this street, it's going to remove the buffer zone, which shields us to some extent from that draft from the buses and gives people a little more sense of confidence that they can navigate from store to store.
In support of the residents, merchants along Granville have sharpened their marketing skills and started a campaign against transit. Many business owners here are saying no to Granville Highway.
It's more than a merchant's issue. We feel the reason that we have got behind this issue so greatly is because the residents have come to us and said this really concerns our community, and we have no voice other than through the merchants to speak.
Everybody is going to pull out, their hose and put out the fire because it doesn't make sense to anybody in this area. It may make sense to some of the people in Richmond, but I think if we explained it to them, they'd probably understand too.
And that's exactly what Sawyer is hoping for. But until then, she says her community will fight for their rights as residents of this charming neighborhood. Timothy Go, Vancouver.
Newsbreak from the newsroom of CKWX. News 1130.
Good evening, I'm Timothy Go. The Fraser River is expected to reach the warning level tomorrow, and the Provincial Emergency Agency is asking those living outside the diking system to be prepared in the event of a flood. The provincial government is finally getting out of the casino business. Gaming Minister Mike Farnworth says the province will no longer control gambling, local governments will. Mortgage rates are expected to come down across the board after the CIBC announced that it is lowering mortgage rates by up to 1/5 of a percentage point. There's still no settlement reached between Pacific Press and its unionized employees. Both sides are still talking, and the union says there will be no strike as long as negotiations continue. And a 5.7 earthquake shook the ocean bed off Vancouver Island this morning. A mild quake also rocked parts of Delta earlier this week. The Alaskan fishing boat seized by Canadian authorities has been released. The U.S. Coast Guard, in the meantime, is sending 2 additional cutters and an aircraft to defend a zone along the BC-Alaska border. 4 people have been injured after a pulp mill explosion in downtown Bellingham. There have been no reports of any fatalities, and the Bellingham Fire Department says everyone has been accounted for. The provincial Liberals are criticizing the NDP government's move to set up the Vancouver Trade and Convention Authority in Ottawa. MLA Rick Thorpe says the government is trying to hide something.
Prostitute advocate Jamie Lee Hamilton will have her day with Mayor Philip Owen. Owen finally agreed to meet with Hamilton after she disrupted Vancouver City Council by refusing to leave. Hamilton demanded to be heard by council about her plea for funds for Grandma's house, a drop-in for sex trade work. Charges ranging from kidnapping and robbery to extortion and disguise with intent have been laid to those in custody, and police say more will be arrested in the days to come. Teenage drivers take a lot of flack for their driving ability, but they seem to be the cause of many accidents. Earlier this week, one accident came to them.